What's up guys, today I have a confession for you. I am addicted to bread. Not talking about any bread though, specifically talking about white bread. White bread with a little bit of Kerrygold salted butter is one of my weaknesses. But I think we could do better than store-bought bread. This video is an experiment between two recipes. They're exactly the same except one recipe has milk instead of water. We're going to see which recipe is actually better. Does milk affect your bread or no? Well, let's get to it. Bread. For this recipe, you'll need flour, salt, sugar, water, yeast, and unsalted softened butter. Heat up your water to about 94 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, add in your yeast, and add about half of your sugar mixture. Now thoroughly stir this to combine. This process is called blooming the yeast, and it will make sure your yeast is active. After a few minutes of letting this sit, if it doesn't have a lot of bubbles, that means your yeast is dead and you need to get fresh yeast and start all over. Then in a bowl of a stand mixer attached with dough hook attachment, add your flour, salt, and sugar. Now mix this on low speed until all this stuff is homogenized and combined, making sure there are no big pockets of sugar or salt in your floury mixture. Add your yeasty bad boy in and make sure it has bubbles like that. If not, your yeast is dead and no bueno. Now let that slowly combine on low speed till it forms a dough. If you see it is not combining properly and there are like giant pockets of flour everywhere, don't be afraid to get in with a spatula and just help out your little stand mixer. Once the dough is a nice ball like this, slowly add your butter in 4 different intervals, making sure each interval is mixed thoroughly before adding the next one. Now add your final interval and keep mixing until all the butter is combined. Once combined, keep letting it go for a few minutes to develop gluten. Then generously flour your work surface and your hands to make sure the dough doesn't stick. Turn out the dough, making sure to get every last piece of this precious jewel, and roll it up to make it into a ball. Now you can see me squeezing the edges of the dough in to make a top ball. Once you have formed a ball, put it into a greased bowl. Now this is really important to grease your bowl. And make sure to grease the top of your dough ball as well, so it doesn't stick on the top. Give it a little rub to show it you care. Smack, smack, hee hee, poke. Guys, say hi to my mom who's in the camera. Since we're eco-friendly, we're going to cover it up with a linen towel and let it rest at room temperature for 2 hours. Now rinse and repeat with milk. Stir to combine, knead the dough, form it into a ball, and use the force to get that towel and cover it up. And let it rise at room temp. Now if you feel like your dough is rising too fast and it's going to overflow out of the bowl, you could put it in the fridge to slow it down. Uncover your dough and take out all the aggression you have because you don't have a Valentine's state by punching the dough down aggressively to knock out all the air in the dough. Once punched down, take a 8x4 pan or a 7x3 pan and generously butter it. I know this recipe works for both pans because I do not have 2 of the same pans. One of my pet peeves. Once it is all buttered, put the pan aside for now. Turn out your punched down dough and form it into a ball like we did before. Once formed into a nice taut ball, take your flour and dust it with a little bit of flour. Now we are going to turn this ball upside down, making sure the smooth side is facing the bottom. We're going to roll this ball into a perfect square, making sure the width of the square is the same width of our bread pan. Make any last adjustments to your square as you please, as I'm stretching the dough out to make it into a better square. Now roll this up into a dough log. This will fit perfectly like a glove into our bread pans. Making sure the dough is seam side down, place it into your bread pan. Rinse and repeat with water dough. Turn it out, roll it up, put it in the pan. For this we need to use plastic. Sorry turtles. Get out a good sheet of plastic wrap and grease it with oil, making sure to get the oil on all edges of the plastic wrap and cover it up. Now let this dough rise a second time at room temperature until it is peeking out just a little out of the pan. graciously remove the plastic wrap and put it in the oven preheated to 375 degrees for 30 to 35 minutes, and be gentle, making sure not to knock out all the air. Once that time has elapsed and your dough looks perfectly golden brown, get it out of the oven immediately, and make sure not to switch up the water in the milk dough. It's very important for an experiment. And turn that onto a cooling rack so the bottom of the bread doesn't go soggy as it's sitting in the bread pan and the steam is developing on the bottom. Now, this is the hardest part of making bread. You need to let these cool for at least 4 hours or up to overnight, or else if you cut into it right now, the texture of your bread will be ruined. It will be terrible, and there's no point in making bread if you don't let it rest. Alright, yesterday I made these two breads. This one is water and this one is milk. Working with the dough, water was more flowy and milk was definitely more stiffer, right? But milk was actually more pleasant to work with because it didn't stick as much. But the water one was more like moving around, elastic, I guess. So I think this one is stiffer because milk is 3.5% fat. Because I used whole milk, it's best to use whole milk for milk breads, and water is just 100% water. Yeah. So let's get to the main part, the taste test between the two. Oh, also, this one has a lighter color, and this one's more dark. I think it's because the extra fat content in here, but it could also be like the heat of the oven or like the pans and stuff. So let's start off with the water first. I have this really crappy bread knife, so just cut in half. It's good to put your bread dough arm's distance away so you have more control over how you cut it. And just alright. Quite moist. Nice crumb. It's quite tight. It's a tight crumb. And let's cut open the milk bread. Okay. This is a more open crumb than this one. You can see it has more holes all over. This one's way more wet by like first glances and touch. Also, the water dough was rising way faster than the milk dough, which is positive or a negative thing, as you might, because if the dough is rising slowly, it's developing more flavor, but you also get done with the process quicker if it's rising faster. So let's cut a slice of each and taste it. Okay, water milk. So definitely gonna taste the crust because that's how you know good bread. It's quite fluffy. It's good. Has a nice brown flavor from the crust. Quite soft, quite tender. Let's taste the milk one. This one has more air. This one is more dense. This one has a bit of a more creamier texture. I know how bread could have a creamy texture, but it feels more creamy in my mouth. This one is also good. They're not that dissimilar in taste, but working with the dough, kneading it, twisting around, rolling it out, the milk dough was much more like fun to work with. This one was more elastic. So I think in my final bread recipe, I'm definitely gonna do a mixture of the two, so it's not too stiff or too elastic. But flavor-wise, they're pretty similar. This one feels more creamy, but this one, they're both just as good. You could do any one of them and still be satisfied. I would eat either one. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Hope you all liked it. If you did, like and subscribe. Happy Valentine's Day. See y'all next time. Adios.